Absolute Green Lantern from DC is coming to your local comic shop on April 2nd. And I just got to see the advanced preview copy from DC. Stick with me, I'll tell you everything you need to know, the full review on Absolute Green Lantern. All right, Absolute Green Lantern is here, and it is written by Hal Ewing, art by Jahnoy Lindsay. I'm a big Hal Ewing fan, have been for a number of years. Love the work that he did on the Hulk and other properties. I think he's an excellent writer. He's been kind of a horror genre, like bringing horror genre feel to my DC characters, or my Marvel characters, I guess, with Hulk. So I've had this expectation of him, and I get a little bit of that with Absolute, right? I'm getting a little bit of that feel with Absolute Green Lantern. And it starts with a story where Hal Jordan he's doing something that's very familiar to our Incredible Hulk fans, actually. It's like the Hulk movies. He's just walking along. He's a highwayman walking along, doing his thing. And there's something that's gone awry. We don't know what's going on with Hal. He's got something happening. It's freaking him out. Now, this is happening a lot in the Absolute stories. We saw a young Wally West in Absolute Flash, and you'll get to read that. I've done the preview of that one already that you can take a look at. We saw a young Wally West who was really in a state of confusion about these new powers that he had gotten. And now we have this new Hal Jordan story, and the first issue is all about Hal Jordan. And this story was him kind of trying to understand his powers and what's happening and what's going on around him. And if you look at the actual cover art, I've shown you a couple of the covers. If you look at the cover art, you can see that Hal does not have a ring on any of these covers. In fact, he is not the highlighted lantern that you see here. So who exactly is this Green Lantern? This Green Lantern is Joe Mullen, and it's an interesting story, but you don't actually see Green Lantern do any Green Lantern-y stuff. It's sort of developing kind of the Aben Sur crash lands his ship, and he finds someone to take this power ring and do some things. Now, when he crash lands the ship, things go awry. Imagine if when he crashes his ship, instead of out in the wilderness and Hal Jordan happens to be flying by in a test aircraft, which is the Prime universe origin. Imagine he crash lands his ship right in the middle of some small town and just crushes stuff when that happens. It's a big old ship. And that's what we see in some of the initial previews, at least. So I'm not giving away any spoilers there. In the initial previews, you see that that's kind of what's happened, that it's landed here. And Hal Jordan knows some of the other characters. So you see 3 lanterns in the first issue. You'll see Hal Jordan, you'll see John Stewart, and you'll see Joe Mullen. And those 3 characters who are lanterns in the Prime universe. But in this story, they're not. In this story, they just happen to know each other, similar to what we've seen in other Absolute books, right? So we've seen that Batman's rogues are in many cases his friends in Absolute. We don't know what the story is with Flash's rogues yet, if you watch my preview for that. And it's kind of a mix and match of what's going on. Now, what they do here, though, is they do something that is irksome to me, I'll say. Well, let me start with this. I like this story. I'm going to be reading Absolute Green Lantern for the entirety of at least its first run. I love these Absolute books. They've not disappointed me yet. I'm going to continue going after them, and I will be reading this for its full arc, for the full initial arc that it has. This one in particular does something that really drives me nuts. And I don't know why, but DC seems to love making Hal Jordan a bad guy. I don't think he's supposed to be a bad guy, but DC loves painting Hal Jordan as the bad guy. And we did this with Parallax, which I think was a really dumb way to use that character. He destroyed a city just in mourning over the loss of Coast City along the way. And then he ultimately turns into Parallax and destroys all of the lanterns. And they made Hal Jordan a big bad. He was a really bad dude. And then he is eventually defeated, banished into the sun. Then Rebirth, we get him back. Kyle Rayner, who is actually the greatest of all the Green Lanterns, in my personal opinion. Kyle Rayner gets him back, and all is well with the world now, and Hal Jordan's back to being kind of our main Green Lantern. That's what we have in Prime Universe. In this universe, he seems to be the antagonist. Even on the cover, you've got this ominous Hal Jordan hand reaching out on the A cover towards this Green Lantern that's our new Green Lantern. It's Joe. And that's sort of what this story is. Like, something's going on with Hal. He's not real sure. And you kind of see him interacting in a diner, and he's just confused and scared, is the bottom line. He doesn't have a lot of control. He's confused. He's scared. And what happened sort of unfolds along the way. And what happened to Hal, and how did this happen? How did he get into this situation? Artwork is great. So what I'll say is Lindsay does a great job of telling the story in a clear and articulate way. The facial expressions are important here, because what they're trying to convey is confusion and fear and things of that nature. A giant ship drops in the middle of your town. That's going to freak you out. And that's sort of what happens here. And Lindsay does a great job of communicating that. And the sheer terror that is happening for Hal in this story is very nicely drawn, articulated. You know exactly what's happening. The emotions really come out. And what I'll say about all of the Absolute artwork is it's been extraordinary. I've not had any concerns with any of it. I'll tell you a little bit later on in another video about Absolute Martian Manhunter, but gosh, that thing looks extraordinary. The artwork there is just off the charts. I've never seen anything quite like that. Actually, I have, but still perfect for what it is. So I love that one. I like this one. So the artwork is great. What I'll say is this story, I think, lands right dead center of all of the Absolutes. I definitely have my favorites and my not so favorites. When it comes to the Absolute books, I think this is sort of dead center in that so far for a first issue. I like the first issues to show us a little bit more of the characters. So Absolute Batman, we saw some really solid Batman action in the first issue. Absolute Wonder Woman, we saw Wonder Woman in action in the first issue. Absolute Superman, a little bit less so. I've been a little disappointed with Absolute Flash and Absolute Green Lantern. We've not seen a lot of superheroic action take place. And I'm hoping what happens is, well, clearly what's going to happen is we are watching a superhero story. We're going to see this unfold, and we'll see some superhero stuff in the end. And the bottom line is, I think there's a lot more to say, a lot more to tell in Absolute Land. I am trusting in the people who have delivered Absolutes up to this point to continue to deliver greatness. So I'm happy with this story. It's just so interesting, right? What's going to happen? How are they going to change things? Who's going to be the good guy? Who's going to be the bad guy? Who are the rogues in this space and who's not? Every one of these is sort of a new mystery and a new thing, and kind of little Easter eggs laid out throughout the whole story. I love that. I love that about the Absolute books. I think Absolute Green Lantern does a good job of getting us to that point. I wish I had some more Green Lantern action happening, but you can't have everything, right? This is just issue number 1. It's your jumping on point. It is in stores April 2nd. And if you have a local comic shop, make sure to tell them that you want a copy so they know to order one for you. If you're watching this too late, make sure you go to your local comic shop and pick one up. As always, the Multiverse, my shop, would be happy to have you as a customer, and you can shop with us online at multiverse.shop. If you happen to be in the Dallas, Texas area, we are in Hearst, and you can come and see us in our brick and mortar store. All right. Thank you so much. Keep reading comics.